facing mining communities has been released. It was conducted by the South African Human Rights Commission. Now, findings show that despite extensive regulation, current industry practice is still characterized by inconsistent legal compliance. Let's get to the latest on that report now. Our reporter on the story, Masego Rahlaga, joins us now live. Masego, this report coming at such an important time. Just last week we were commemorating 6 years since the Marikana massacre. And how that massacre affected that community there and how it continues to affect that community there. What's new about what this report says?
Good afternoon, Michelle. Well, of course, it comes at a correct time, especially because the hearings did take place 2 years ago in September of 2016, and a few community members voicing out their concerns regarding how they're affected economically and socially with regards to living around where mines operate. But of course, to answer more questions about what came out of the report, I will speak to the commissioner who chaired this, and that's Commissioner Mohammed Amirmia, and he will be giving us more information specifically about what came out with regards to SAHRC and how municipalities don't know when a license is given to a company to operate a mine in certain communities of their jurisdiction. And I will go to him now. Commissioner, thank you very much for your time this afternoon. You did mention in your report that the local government, municipalities, as I said earlier, don't know when mining licenses are given to certain companies to operate in their jurisdiction. In the report, the finding actually says that the DMR, and that's the Department of Mineral Resources, as well as other government departments, actually don't follow certain policies and regulation or legislation. Can you tell us about the two acts that you cited in this report and exactly what they don't follow when it comes to these policies?
You see, good afternoon to you and your listeners. I think what comes out of this report, first of all, let me just contextualize it. It has been 2 years since this report came on, but one must understand that it was a 3-sitting intensive hearing where you had government, you had civil society, you had academics, everybody come here to come and, tell us what are the systemic problems in this industry, in the extractive industries. Now, in relation to this, I think the long and the short is that obviously there is a masterpiece framework in legislation that calls for an intergovernmental cooperation between the 3 spheres of government. And it seems that there was a lack of communication there. So that's why SAHRC, who basically, is a mother body around, the governors at local level, basically raised those concerns to say that when, the mining houses came into the municipalities, right, municipalities' planning processes were not responsive to the mining operations there. So therefore, there was that disconnect resulted in the kind of problem statements that happened on the ground. Communities were equally frustrated because then, it was like somebody imposing from the top at the bottom and saying this must happen. Now, unfortunately, that doesn't work that way. We have a constitution, and in a constitutional democracy, what we're saying is the rule of law applies, right? There's to be intergovernmental relationship when it comes to a mining operation that must take place there on the ground, right? Because a mining operation takes place within the jurisdiction of a municipality. It impacts on the IDPs, right? Now, all those issues that you raise now with us, the act with, the mineral resources, the MRPDA, as well as IPILRA, would speak to those issues as well, because it has important issues around water, the environment, relocations, rehabilitations. All those things have to be factored into the master plan of a municipality. Now, if the municipal governors don't know that, how do you expect them to then be responsive to a master plan that takes care of the vulnerable and the poor and the disabled and the weak in those areas? Those were the kind of key challenges this report picked up itself. I think the way forward is now, what this has demonstrated to us is that I think we should have a structured approach to working in a coordinated way, right? The Human Rights Commission perhaps will take the lead now through the findings and the directives and the recommendations of this to engage intensively on the findings and the recommendations of this report with the various government stakeholders. And I think the right way to do it would perhaps be to talk to the Interministerial Committee in Parliament itself, right, in the Office of the Presidency, that can basically round all the policy makers at the national level and cascade it down so that we get a better order and a systemic way of dealing with the problem statement. I think that would be the the impact of this report. Regarding the people who are on the ground who are crying foul of getting the short end of the stick, we are saying to them as well, the purpose of this particular exercise was to, following the Marikana inquiry, right, the submissions we made there, the acid drainage mining report, and those recommendations that were there basically showed us that this was an environment that was fraught with problems, and we had to address those problems. Hence, because the Marikana findings came short of basically addressing the systemic issues, this is where the Human Rights Commission put this report together and came up with some kind of a way forward, creating a roadmap towards a system where, if it's structured well enough, can be very, very helpful to the economic prosperity of this country for everybody. But when things do not work according to how they're supposed to work in terms of the legislative mandates that are there, it can go horribly wrong, and then everybody blames everybody else. I mean, as the panelist, Professor Tracy Hamby, said, at one point in time there were some government departments that did not take us serious as a Human Rights Commission. I sent them back. I said, if you don't take the Human Rights Commission serious, there are consequences for your minister and for your DGs. So do you want to take the responsibility? And then they backed off. And then they came back with some kind of answers which we then factored into our response in this report itself.
Okay, Commissioner, so the mining industry has been quite problematic in quite a number of years with the zamazamas, the issues around illegal mining, mines that are not closed down properly, and community members end up going in there and some people die. And also also about the fact that water is also then contaminated. I believe that there are issues that you are going to raise in terms of audits in those licenses for water use. But I just want to know from the Commission, where to from now? Because the mining communities have been suffering for quite some time now.
Good question, and I think the way forward here with the zamazamas is we're saying we can't be having the cat and mouse game. We're first saying that we need to create a regulatory framework for the zamazamas to operate. We are also, we said it very clearly in our zamazama report, which we released some time ago on this particular issue. We then said around the role of the SAPS, right, SEPS, and the zamazamas itself. We need to regulate that environment as well. And I think perhaps this findings of this report, together with all our findings now, basically gives us a proper kind of a structured approach to then interact with Department of Minerals and Resources to say that, listen, the zamazamas are not going to go away. The rehabilitation of mines have not happened properly. Right? So we need to go back and answer those kind of questions. In relation to water, yes, we are very, very worried because water is a scarce commodity in our country. Okay? When it comes to water use licenses that are issued there, we are saying that those must be also monitored, because if they are not monitored, you must just take the licenses away from the mining houses. That's the long and the short. I think, we have a regulatory framework. We have a wonderful constitution. But unfortunately, when policymakers detract from those systematic approaches, right, then we're going to land ourselves into a lot of problems and challenges that are there. We as a Human Rights Commission are saying to communities out there, we are here for you. We are in all 9 provinces, right? Individually, we will attend to your problem statements. We'll attend to your grievances as well. And we can, in terms of the mandate that we have in the South African Human Rights Commission Act, is to go to places and knock at the doors of the policymakers. We don't have to run every second, case to the Constitutional Court. We have those powers in the Act itself to dig into these issues, to find solutions that are basically will be lasting for, sustainable solutions in the best interest of everybody in that space.
Thank you very much, Commissioner, for your time today. Michelle, as you've just heard, policies are there, legislation is there. It's the same government that puts these policies in place that then doesn't follow or implement these policies. And therefore, that's where the problem is. And the Commissioner saying that they will definitely be monitoring this and making sure that departments such as the Mineral Resources Department starts to actually do its work and implement these policies.
All right, thanks very much for that very important update. eNCA's Masego Rahlaga giving us an update on that mining investigative report on the underlying socio-economic challenges facing the many mining communities around the country.